Joining me this evening in this podcast is Candace in US. I am here in my studio in Cape Town, and we'll be discussing slow down your yoga and activate innate healing. Candace, what would you say is innate healing?
Sure. When I speak about the pace of gentle yoga and the power that comes from slowing down yoga, interesting that we're doing this today. I've got a really good example of a class I taught yesterday, and this client normally attends a more power flow, faster flow class, and she came to my class yesterday, and I did slight adjustments on her knee, moved her ever so slightly in the shoulders and the knee and the arch of the foot in the warrior two posture. And she went, wow, that's actually really hard. And I just thought that was like such an aha moment, because many people, not everybody, but many people have this perception that if we're slowing down, it's easy, or if we're slowing down, we're not really doing anything. And she actually said, oh, wow, that's much harder, because she was actually feeling her body. And therefore, if dealing with anything in the knee, in the leg, that's the physical body. So we're healing the physical body. When we slow down, we're more aware of our breath. We're more aware of our thoughts. We're more aware of just where we're at, how we feel. And I feel like that sums it up. If we're slowing down and we're focusing, how does our body feel? How can we correct it? Where is our mind? Is it here? Is it on the breath? And then, how do we feel? Are we processing anything? And I think that is essentially where we meet that deeper level of healing.
It's easier to go faster and skip over not mistakes, but over areas that can easily be improved if we slow down. When we go fast, there's a certain amount of momentum that carries us through. And they tend to be, even if you're pretty amazing at your yoga practice, you're probably going to find it much harder to have the body awareness required to be that self-aware that you can know exactly what to do. It's actually about knowing exactly what to do.
Right.
And for me, that innate healing is about not just doing yoga practice and hoping for the best. And while it will deliver most likely a fair amount of healing, because that's what yoga does, there's a chance, I would say a fair chance, that we can increase the level of innate healing when we slow down enough to allow the healing response. So yeah, that was like quite a good one. And then you also explained basically what slow yoga is, because that was going to be another question. So
yes.
So that, if I'm saying this right, so it's not necessarily doing a different style of yoga. It's simply doing the same thing, and not the whole class slower either. It's just slow enough that you can be a better observer.
I think so. And I think the pace also allows people, as we've spoken about in previous podcasts and things like that, it allows people attending the class to have that body awareness, because when you're moving at a pace that's maybe not suited for you. So this week I've been speaking about honoring our bodies. So I've had a client very frustrated with his knee. He's doing restorative yoga therapy, but he's very frustrated with his knee. He can't play tennis. It hurts when he sits too long. He's very frustrated. And I said to him, it takes more growth to honor your body than to just be stubborn and kind of move through the pain and just pretend that it's not there. So honoring your body, I mean, we can dive deep into that conversation another day, but I feel the slower pace allows you to honor your body. What is my knee doing? What is my back doing? So slowing it down, I feel, gives it that overall balance. You can have awareness of your breath. Your mind should be focusing on the breath and your practice, and not drifting off and thinking of other things. And it brings back a certain balance. It allows the chakras to balance. I mean, we can go really deep into it, but it's the pace of doing it. You can do a sun salutation, maybe just skip the chaturanga, but do a sun salutation flow really slowly. And maybe not doing 108 of them, as some yogis do, but maybe just do 5 and doing it really slowly, like really feel the energy all the way to the fingertips, feel your feet grounding into the mat and moving at that slow, manageable pace.
Yeah, in my experience, there's a fair amount of, in terms of how we teach yoga, Candace and I. So specifically, I've been trained in Shivananda Hatha Yoga, and so I trained Candace according to similar principles in our teacher training. And so now we are also training and sharing that in similar ways. For me, what's always come up as a teacher is not so much what you say, although that's also important, but how you say it, if that makes any sense. So you could do 108 sun salutations mindfully at the same speed as somebody that does 108 sun salutations unmindfully at a little bit slower, for example. So it is very much about skills, and I would say that absolutely as a statement that what yoga is all about is skill development. We absolutely develop skills so that whether we want to go faster or slower. So slow down your yoga is a kind of a weird comment in the sense that when we sometimes go faster and we know what we're doing, it still slows down. So yeah, that's a little bit left field though. But we sometimes have that sense, and for me, that's where I actually love the more power flow styles, because it does actually open up a new space. So it's not really rejecting something, in other words, it's more embracing. Yeah, it's more embracing other ways of being. So I'm going to be reading off the classroom on my phone, and what I put here was slowing down your yoga helps healing, because it helps to adjust the body-mind into a digestive and rejuvenative parasympathetic nervous system response. Well, we already know that in general from yoga, but we don't necessarily practice it. We already know that it's better to, generally speaking, most people know it's better to sit down and eat a meal and chew it than to run around talking on your phone or something and stressing and trying to eat the takeaway. I would say mostly everybody knows that. Not everybody wants to know it, but people know it.
Not everybody does it, even if they know it. They should.
Yeah, exactly. So weirdly enough, a lot of yoga people will do the same. They'll eat, so to speak, a healthy meal or do a healthy practice, yoga, but not necessarily add to it or bookend it. Like, for instance, starting with a meditation and ending with relaxation, that kind of thing. So that there is enough yin in it, or offset of the faster work. Right. And it doesn't actually require that much relaxation in yoga, which is why we were taught in the Shivananda system. For every hour, you need every hour of yoga practice, 15 minutes of that must be relaxation. In some form. So that could be almost just sitting or doing a very gentle pranayama. It doesn't have to be lying down for 15 minutes. But essentially, at least 15 minutes of every hour has to be extremely calming, like as in super relaxing. Right. That's quite a nice rule of thumb, actually.
Yeah.
So if you can tell me a little bit more, and our listeners of this course, a little bit more about understanding of the nervous system, and when will it be hyped, so to speak, burning the candle at both ends, whether it's in yoga or not doing yoga, and what would be the most key factor for you to share that will help to unlock the innate healing of the body? In other words, it becomes relaxed and then it heals itself. It's innate.
Yes. Well, it's also, again, it's what a lot of people know, but they don't necessarily do it, is definitely doing yoga 2 to 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be an hour class every single time. There's so much available online now. You could book a 30-minute private. You can use YouTube. You can Even just listening to a podcast could be, if it's an inspiring podcast, could be part of a yoga practice. But it is about bringing that balance back, because most people, and again, I'm really generalizing because some people have created beautiful balance in their life, but a lot of the general population, they don't have balance and they're very, very stressed. They'll come to yoga, oh, I just need to relax. I'm so stressed. That's why I remind people when they're in a child's pose, don't start letting your mind wander off now just because you're not moving. You've got to stay with that breath. And I've said this before, but yoga once a week, you feel the changes in the body. Twice a week, you start to feel the changes maybe in your mind. You're more aware. You suddenly want to be healthy, drink green tea, eat more greens. And then once you start doing it 3 times a week, you change your life. You really do. So it's investing in that. If healing is important to you and you're feeling pulled towards it, you're feeling out of balance, you probably do need to slow down. And that healing will come when you invest in this self-love practice, doing it every week. And you don't have to commit again to a full hour every time. So if you had to say on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, this is what I'm going to dedicate. I'm going to do 10 minutes of a meditation podcast. One class I'm going to do an hour. But it's about giving your body in the same way where if we keep eating healthy, our bodies function better. If we eat McDonald's, we don't function. Our body's just it's not getting what it needs. But that healing comes from investing in this self-love practice. The nervous system, allowing your brain, you can reprogram your brain. There's lots of things, biohacking, all of that interesting stuff. But with yoga, you just naturally want to do better, be better, because you're feeling better.
Yeah, I put something here that for me is key personally to yoga, and not everyone has to necessarily agree with that, but you can't necessarily disagree with it either, is that the yoga system is so powerful that you can just do a very simple practice and it will do biohacking for you.
Right.
So in our culture, in the Western culture, and especially you guys in the States, there's forever this thing of like, what's the new fad? Okay, the new fad is biohacking. So one of the most amazing things of yoga is that it was always a slow down awareness. The idea of yoga before it became popular in general, although there was an interesting trend in Indian yoga, is that yoga has been fairly obscure as a philosophy. It exists powerfully in India and has been for centuries, but previous century, when yoga started to become popular in the West, it also really started becoming popular in the West in a bigger way than it was in India. There's like more people practicing in the West in terms of the actual asana and so on. In terms of the lifestyle and the philosophy and the Ayurveda and Panchakarma, all of that, we had no idea.
Yeah.
Either way, that's good stuff to think about, to contemplate. The point really is that, in that sense, yoga is I'm not insulting India. It's in terms of the West, it's viewed as a third world, or was at that time, and because of the arrogance of the first world in general, and I'm generalizing, there's been that absence of the traditional slowness. The slow food movement has been interesting for that reason, because it's literally don't do fast food, like as in from takeaway shops, but also sit down and appreciate your meal. And then that, I would say, in a big way, has led to the rising. Now, it's not only the animal movements, right? I know I'm just digressing. It's not only the vegetarianism that's become popular now as well, but it's also really the idea that junk food or eating fast and appreciating food and appreciating the source of food, where does it come from, and is it organic and vegetarian and healthy, has to do with slowness. People stopping to think about what the hell's going on. And why I'm saying all of that is because somehow, if the human mind, our culture notwithstanding, in other words, wherever we come from, if we don't slow down and look at the big picture, it's like we cease to understand really who we are, where we come from.
Yeah.
And we need to slow down, and that's a lifestyle yoga.
We have to be yogis off the mat too.
To say,
yeah, that's so important. And the more yoga you do, you won't be drawn to the junk food. You just won't, because you will be programming your body you'll be honoring your body.
Yeah.
So you'll just want to be better, to feel better, because that's the direction and the energy space that you'll be in. You won't be in the McDonald's energy space anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how do you approach the slower style yoga? So I don't, for instance, I mean, I'm speaking about doing it in a class. I don't say in the beginning of a class, howdy folks, we're going to be practicing slow yoga today. People just sense, oh right, this isn't going like terribly fast.
No, here you need to tell people, they'll want to hear you tell them what you're all about. So the way that I'll start the class is to, if it's a new class and they don't know me, I'll introduce myself. I'll first check if anybody's dealing with any serious injuries.
Sure. Yeah.
So that I know if everybody in there is dealing with shoulder injuries, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of downward dogs, because it's not going to work. So I normally check just where we're at with the group, if it's a lot of new faces. And then what I do is I explain, very short, doesn't need to be a long introduction, that this is a gentle yoga class. And even though we're going to be moving at a slow pace, we are still going to be moving through an asana flow. And you need to modify, you need to honor your body and listen to your body. Don't worry what anyone else is doing on their mats. But if something doesn't feel right for you, for whatever reason, take a break to modify or even skip a pose. And you'll find most people can do the whole class, but it just gives them that reassurance at the beginning of the class that despite it being a gentle class, everybody's at a different space in the yoga journey or a different space on that day for whatever reason. And to make it your own practice. But people feel very encouraged at the words of gentle yoga, manageable pace, slower pace. And they're still learning how to do Warrior 2, Warrior 3 even. It's not that they're not learning challenging stuff in my classes, but the pace that it is allowing people to do it without injury, to still feel relaxed afterwards, and they keep coming back. So I'm doing something right.
Yeah. So that's that sense of the feeling, and
right.
not only the words that you choose. Right.
Right.
Okay, that's useful orientation to not necessarily punt slow yoga, but to say certain things in such a way that people can sense, that they can feel what's going on. But we're gonna skip back to the Google class again. So the paragraph that I was reading earlier, and slowing down your yoga helps healing because it helps adjust the body-mind into a digestive rejuvenation parasympathetic nervous system response. Now this is something that has been known to yogis since the yoga started, thousands and thousands of years. And I don't think it's necessarily new information. But what I am seeing on the internet, and what I'm hearing when people talk sort of commonplace conversation,
right,
there definitely is a different awareness and a new consciousness of this, that yes, there are people burning the candle on both ends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like no one's really exempt from that. And then sometimes it's perhaps the way of the world, it's perhaps normal. So my sense is that when we have this information, we can act on it, and we can, like I said earlier, slow our yoga where possible, or where we feel it's possible. Because there's also the reality that we're in. Many yoga teachers teaching a lot of classes to make a living, or a lot of people teaching yoga or coming to yoga classes are busy with their careers in maybe other fields, or they're family people like anyone else, or somebody that wants to go out on a weekend and can't get away from work, so they work hard in the week. So what would be the most golden idea around slowing down one's yoga that you can provide as a takeaway, a thought, a sentence? It could be a longer one, or you can explain it, but yeah.
When I have people come up to me after class and say, I really like this style of yoga, I feel really, really good. That is what I'll say to people is come and try a gentle yoga class, see how you feel. And they come and they do it and they're like, wow, I feel so good, and almost surprise themselves of what they could do because of the pace, explaining, and as I guide them through it, even holding poses for longer, like we do in Hatha Flow classes, holding the poses for a few breaths, really feeling what everything feels like. So I feel like that, exactly as you just said, the body mind, but the awareness of everything, of our mind, our body, our spirit, and how we feel after the class. And we can take that energy with us that we now feel and go into the rest of our day, or maybe it's into our evening. And that's what keeps bringing people back to their mat with this style of yoga. They just feel really good, and they feel a sense of accomplishment too, because maybe what they couldn't do before, they feel inspired because they can do it now. At the same time as potentially healing injuries as well. If the shoulder or the knee was sore, if I had somebody come to me and say they want to do a private session, their shoulders are really tight, I'll work into a slow yoga class that helps them, and afterwards they say, well, my shoulders feel better. So, and it's not because we were doing anything complicated, or it's not super simple. Even doing eagle arms, but I'd modify it for the client to do it lying down on their mat. They're not trying to do balance standing up, falling over, but they're twisting their arms and working into that shoulder space. So I think, to keep it short, is if we were to put that in one sentence, it's going to help you to feel so, so good and create that balance with the mind, the body, or that awareness. And that stress level that you feel, you're slowing down, that's going to become more manageable too.
Yeah, that's a good springboard for this short course.
Right.
In essence, it's about feeling good, and part of feeling good is when we have a I'm able mindset, and not simply plowing on I can do it, and you kind of half breaking your back or something at the task.
Right.
And also a true sense of when the body is in a feel good energy, or we're feeling great, we're feeling positive, our nervous system works, which is of course a physiological response to not being stressed when we're feeling congested.
Yeah.
So one of the particular notes that in our course here is that the practice is beginner friendly. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And also a key point for me is that when we feel good, we're not simply high on a feeling because it's somebody put a thought in our head. But or because we put a thought in our head with positive thinking, but because we're actually having this experience of feeling good. That's like having a hearty meal, which is always my point about health and well-being. We must feel well nourished, like fed properly, not like less, but more is more. And a slow hearty meal, for that matter. Before we get too hungry, I wanted to specifically just find something here where I said that I used a specific phrase when I typed up this note, which was slow and sacred. So a very important aspect for me personally, about aspect about yoga that appeals to me, and that I find to be very useful in our time, the last 50 years of the West becoming more and more stressed out in many ways. But specifically now, that to restore the body-mind to spirit, literally, or so to speak, is a sacred act. And we generally don't want to rush into a spiritual moment and then rush as fast as we can. I think that's a poor example. What I mean to say is that something sacred, like sitting down for a lovely meal, we sit down, we slow down the process, and at least in the beginning we go like, breathe in, breathe out, and you recognize that you are grateful for the moment, and that it's actually not an externalizing going out, it's actually going within. So sacred really is a process of going within oneself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's an introversion. So that's like that's probably a real essence for me of slower yoga.
Yeah.
And it's an approach to do yoga. It doesn't mean that the whole class has to be like slow and like saying thank you every 3 seconds and so on.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Right. Are there any other points that you can remember, first standout point for you about the notes in the classroom, whatever it is, random awareness? Just give us
hard to choose. It's hard to choose, but the slow and healing and slow and effective, I feel that comes across really, really. It's sure, like clear as day when you work through a gentle yoga class as a teacher, and you even observing the class when people sit down on their mats to start or lie down on their mats to start, and where they are when they come out of that shavasana at the end. That's slow and healing and slow and effective. I've seen it effectively change them at a slow pace, and they're moving their bodies and they're healing their mind, their body, their spirit.
Yeah, that's amazing for me as well to witness that. So interestingly enough, especially for me as a note, I'm looking at those 5 points: slow and sacred, slow and safe, slow and accessible, slow and healing, slow and effective, as I for some reason put sacred at the top. When you get to the bottom and you look back up again, you go, healing, sacred. So obviously you can bounce it in any direction. You can also say safe is accessible, or accessible is sacred. Healing is sacred. And none of it is slow as in boring, or sacred as in you can't make a joke, or sacred that you can't also go fast, like we've explained. So these dynamics, for me, is very much what the yoga system is about. It's a dynamic system. Yoga is extremely dynamic. And even if we do an entire class slowly, that's a dynamic opposite to being busy the whole day. It's about the play of opposites. Really, it's not about saying this is the steadfast rule. It's like so many beats per minute or second or whatever. Per minute, so many BPMs, but it's not a prescribed pace. It's more a feel pace. All right. What I also wanted to highlight about the class training was that it's experiential. It's the person learning this yoga or training with this yoga has to experience it. And if we can't share the experience as a yoga teacher or with ourselves, the practitioner, when we practice on our own, then we're not really feeling it. It's not a body-mind awareness. It's simply an idea. So when a yoga starts to translate into a real body physical feeling, the mind can make sense of that. So that's for me a really important aspect. So the training that we suggest in terms of the online classes, but that in general is that there has to be some self-practice, there has to be some self-study. And it's not just listening to the podcast, but then at some point the same day or the next day, whenever you sit down to practice again, to go, what is that one thing in the podcast that sticks out for me? And that one thing may be different for 10 different people, 10 different things. But that is really the important essence of it as well, is that the next day it may be something else, or it may be the same point revisited, which means it's not necessarily the same point any longer because it's changing.
Right.
So the way of learning that yoga suggests, the way I interpret it or understand it, or what we're teaching and sharing, is that we really have to listen to ourselves. And if we don't make that space, then we're not making that space and we're just going too fast. We're going to skip over too many parts. So some feedback on that would be nice. It can even be a closing, or close to a closing comment as well.
So I like what you said in the notes about the overlapping motivations to slow down your yoga, which kind of circles back around to, it's kind of difficult to pick one thing to summarize it. But when you said overlapping motivations to slow down your yoga and following common sense, ancient yogic approach that is neither a fad nor novelty. And when I advertise my classes, I say suitable for all levels and all ages, because it doesn't matter if you're 21 or 71. You should be able to come to the class, modify for your body where you're at, and just feel good afterwards.
Yeah, to that I would want to add that this classical yoga or timeless yoga or universal yoga, ancient yoga, whatever you want to think of it as, it could be new to the next person or somebody that's already been studying yoga for 10 years or 50, is that when we revisit this basic truth of it, that yoga itself isn't a fad, and it's simply something that's timeless, that has this practical wisdom, then we're tapping into the innate wisdom of healing, and the innate quality that yoga can deliver to any practitioner. Not only the person that's been doing it for 50 years, but literally the person we mentioned that's doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And just that piece of information, or if we can think of it as wisdom, is literally what yoga is about. And for me, sharing that piece of wisdom is then, of course, me going slow enough to sense that and be able to share it. But it's also the same wisdom that I was blessed with by going to an ashram and then studying yoga, where the yoga would always involve some level of slowing down and simplifying our lives or our practice, or all of that at some point in time, so that we can experience this innate wisdom or the innate healing of yoga.
Yeah.
So a very, very, very uncomplicated message, really.
Yeah.
And it's sacred for that reason as well, because it's special. It's about life, and always the sacred aspect of yoga is about life. It's pro-life.
It is, and it becomes sacred to the individual in different ways.
Yes.
So as simple as it sounds, it's also, for me, some of the most diving deep, if I can say that, into the soul, more than any other yoga that I've tapped into.
Yeah. Yes, and obviously we've made it as clear as I feel one can, is that this is a transferable skill. It'll work for a physiotherapist, it'll work for a novice sports person, anyone with the inclination to or a pull, like somebody that resonates with not only going fast and furiously. And interestingly enough, I've also often in my life come across people that are inclined to go fast, and the candle at both ends, with a very deep wisdom about how they live, to know there's a time and a place to slow down.
Right.
And often these people are highly effective.
Yeah.
Because they have that realization, or they have it naturally in many cases, that giving the body and mind enough time to slow down, it can be much more effective.
Totally.
Yeah. Right, Candace, thank you very much. I feel that
Thank you.
that's enough to introduce our course to students, New World, and
teachers as well.
And teachers, and teachers. And if you want to do a commercial break about our course, our offering here.
We're going to be doing online courses going forward, so they can just reach out and we can either do a one-on-one or a group session.
Thank you, Candace. On my side, good night, and on your side, good morning.
Yes.